Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and earn even more money. All in one place, and it's for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup looks like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. Best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since we discovered Spotify for Podcasters, we feel like having options like video podcasts, Q&A, and polls has let us be creative on a whole other level. I highly recommend you give it a try. So download Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started. Welcome back, Exes and T podcast fans. Hey, it's Danny here. I'm really excited to be back with you guys as always. I just want to go ahead and kind of start out like I always do, just thanking everybody for your support, for coming back, for sharing the podcast, and for just being so supportive. Actually, I'm really excited because the couple that I have on here, they shared my podcast. And because of them sharing my podcast, we got to hear a story. We got to hear Antonia's story, which by the time this has been recorded has come out. And this couple, you guys, their story adds like a whole new perspective that I think is a lot different from anything we've had here. As always, I have to give a disclaimer when we speak on Worldwide Dream Builders or Amway or any of the other lines of affiliation. I have to say, yes, I have beef with both of these companies, both of them. They're both guilty in my opinion. But that is just it. I'm speaking on my opinion and my personal experiences. My guests are speaking on personal experiences, personal opinions. Everything is alleged. Just because we have to say that legally. I'm not here to defame Amway or Worldwide. If you want to join, any of the Amway tools businesses or Amway themselves, do you. I would just say, hey, proceed with caution, but also have a fucking backup plan. Don't be doing what they try to tell you to do. Anyways, so with that, I want to bring on Michael and Michelle. If you guys are not familiar and haven't listened to Antonia's story yet, go listen because Michael and Michelle are the reason why we got to hear Antonia's story. So thank you, Michael and Michelle, for being here and for being such big supporters.
Oh, our
Thanks
pleasure.
for having us.
Thanks so much for having us. My goodness, it's amazing.
How did you guys find my podcast?
Well,
This amazing lady right here.
I throughout the whole journey of being in the business, I have always been a bit of a skeptic, a bit of a realist. And towards the end of our journey, in 2019 and 2020, specifically during the shutdown, I started looking more and more into anti-MLM, anti-Amway, Worldwide, and really just to see another perspective. Because I felt like I was alone in my thoughts about maybe this is not 100% okay. And I was following an anti-MLM girl on Instagram, and through the tags, I found your podcast, Exes and T. And then I took a listen to a few different episodes and I was hooked and excited that someone was actually talking about it and you were getting people who were recently in it to actually discuss what was happening.
Yeah, and then she forwarded your podcast to me. It's like, oh, you got to listen to it. And she's like referring to specific people in Worldwide. And I was like, no way. So yeah,
it's so hard to find because lots of things are blocked and taken down.
Exactly. So right when we listened to the first episode,
that was in 2021 where I sent that to you.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
It took me a while to actually send it over to him.
It literally feels like it was like this year, but yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, it was so amazingly helpful just because of all of our years in business, in quote unquote partnership, as it were. So being able to one, almost kind of like go down memory lane and re-listen and listen to everybody else's stories and what they encountered, it gave us hope. It gave us,
that we can find a way out.
Yeah. And also, the possibility of like having another avenue, another platform, be able to share our story, hopefully, and be able to, perhaps help anybody else that maybe have been in business a part of Worldwide or part of Amway for, an X amount of time. And if they're, questioning anything, or even just, battling with something eternally, that what they encountered and what they went through, it's like, it's okay. It's completely understandable. And it's not you.
Yeah.
It's not you.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I am really glad that you guys are here. I also just want to add that every name that we're going to be discussing has been changed as always, but also Michael and Michelle are here anonymously. These are not their real names. And the reason why I want to point that out is because you're right, things do get taken down. Things like people who are especially higher up, like some of those diamonds, you just don't know who their connections are. And for me, I know it's important to, I'll say very specific details about people so we all know who I'm talking about. But I think the message is so much more important. And I would hate to get, taken down or flagged or anybody who's trying to cross my path and tell me what I can and can't say. So I do change names, but I also want people to know that if you want to come here and change your name, that's okay too, because the story itself is important. It doesn't matter if it comes from you saying your name or not saying your name. Whatever's going to empower you is really the best option. So just with that, we have changed everybody's names. But with you guys and this whole Worldwide Dream Builders and Amway, how did you guys get involved in Amway?
Oh,
Story.
long story.
So, in fall of 2013, I was putting on a school fundraiser, and lots of my friends from college showed up to help support. And then another friend from college who is JC, she actually came, and I was so shocked because she doesn't live near this. Like, she clearly came out of her way, and I was like, wow, that's so nice. Like, she's helping support my school.
Yeah.
And then we all sat down with me, her, and some of the college friends, and she basically shared her story of the business and made us aware. And it really went over my head because I was just complaining about work and about how many hours I'm putting in, and teachers aren't treated well, etc. But our mutual friend who was there, had lots of questions for her, and they basically set up a time to meet at another time. And then it wasn't until later on, the following year in early 2014, actually during our engagement party, where Mark had actually talked to you.
Yeah, he mawad me, I think, as we were, getting food, at the party, and he did it like over the island, as we were getting food for the food. And I remember going like, oh, that's great. Hey, and to so-and-so, to another person, because it didn't, affect me. I was still finishing up college. I was a theater major in college, so I was just knee deep in working 3 jobs plus school, being a theater major. So you're working on a production, you're working on scenes and monologues, schedule is packed. And plus on top of that, we're engaged in planning a wedding. So it was, one of those things was just like, oh, that's great. But, my mind is elsewhere,
And then they approached us again at our co-ed bridal shower later on that same year. And then by then, our friend who had questions for JC at the fundraiser, by then he was already sponsored into business. And him and I were talking, and we've been friends forever, and we're still friends with him. He was saying how, well, if you keep complaining about school and about work and about money, Mark and JC are actually, really building something great for themselves, and they're able to like pay for their car in cash. And I'm like, wow, in this day and age, for our generation, for a 20-something-year-old, that's really amazing. And he's like, yeah, you should really talk to them and sit down with them. And it actually took me a while to tell it to Michael about Mark and JC, because I knew once I told him, because he's always, he always wants to make sure we're financially secure. So once I told him, I feel like that's it. He's not going to act again. And I didn't want that to happen. But I eventually told Michael, and he's like, yeah, sure, let's meet up with them. And at this time, he was actually commuting back and forth between California and Las Vegas. And we eventually sat down with them, and who turned out to be our sponsor, Evan, who kind of set it all up. And we started our meet and greets our board plans, our follow-ups, and the whole process the summer of 2014.
2014, yeah, which was kind of, and it was kind of weird because when we first had our first meet and greet, Evan was there because Evan said like, oh, set up the time to meet with Mark and JC. And we're like, okay, great. And then when we got there, we're like, why is Evan here?
We had no idea the structure of it.
We had no idea the structure of the meet and greet, et cetera. It wasn't exactly communicated. I remember a funny thing. You remember, because I was late our first meet and greet, because I was literally driving from California to Las Vegas to meet. And I got there and I dressed up in like, I think like a t-shirt and shorts.
Yeah, and you were sweaty
and I
because it was summer.
I was like, I'm so sorry I'm late. I think I might have been like a half hour late or something.
Yeah.
Because I thought like, oh, they'll be talking, hanging out, whatever. I didn't understand the quote unquote posture of it, the importance of it all yet. So they were like, let's reschedule this. I'm like, oh, are you sure? Like, oh no, let's wait until, obviously our time is valuable, as you can imagine. Everyone was just like, okay, sure. So already we could feel like
tension.
Yeah, it's like, oh, we should, I'm sorry for being late, but I thought, we were friends,
Exactly.
that I thought you guys would just be talking, hanging out, and we'll talk about this. So we had to reschedule that first meet and greet to another day. And then
when you were still in town.
When I was still in town.
Yeah.
And then that worked out fine. And keep in mind, I was still working on 2 productions at the same time, a festival in California. And so when they gave us the book at that time, it was the Business of the 21st Century.
Yes.
Yes,
Kiyosaki.
Classic Kiyosaki book. And we did our best of sharing the book, trying to, read it back and forth while I was in a different state. And then we tried to reschedule the second meet and greet, but then JC postured us again. I think it was over Facebook Messenger at that point. So it wasn't, but they put us like in our place, so to speak, almost being like, excuse me, like, we invested this time and we really can't reschedule based on that. So, we might have to take the opportunity off the table.
Well, did you have to come in
because
just to meet and then drive back
and drive back? So the reason why we called out was just because I was exhausted and tired. I was like, I really want to get some sleep, really.
Well, you had a performance.
Because I had a performance and, drove back 4 hours. So I'm like, is there any way? But then, they postured us and they were like, okay, fine.
And this was pre-Zoom, pre like FaceTime.
This was 2014. Yeah. So everything was in person.
Yeah.
And so we're like, okay, let's not make them mad anymore. So we did it. And then after that, it all worked well. They built up so much of making it into the first board plan. We said all the right things, I guess, earn their trust enough to earn a spot in the first board plan.
What's so funny is that when they say, what would you do with $75,000? My answer was go to grad school. And you could totally tell on their faces, they're like, that's not the right answer.
I don't know.
It's like, oh my God, I could go to grad school and not have debt. That'd be amazing.
That would work great.
And that's not what they were looking for,
Yeah.
And then also we were like, oh, we can open a theater in Vegas. Because there's big community theater in Vegas, but the venues are pretty shoddy.
We need a good, efficient, equity, regional theater, built theater.
And again, on their faces, they're like, ooh, that's not the correct.
And it's like, And then
that's not what you should do with your money.
But then we're just like, oh, we travel every single state in the US and travel all over the world. Stay in the nicest hotels,
Right. And that was more okay.
Which honestly, that's what we want to do. We love to travel,
But the fact that we were thinking of furthering education and building something that's technically outside the business was not okay.
Yeah. I tell you, our first board plan was nuts because our first board plan was in somebody's house. I forget who, but it was the Diamond who talks extremely fast.
The guy who talks really fast. He's the guy, if you guys are not familiar, if you've been in the business, you know who this guy is. He talks really fast and his parents are diamonds and him and his wife in Vegas and all that fun stuff. So we all know.
Yep. So he was our upline. He started out, he at that time, he and his wife were double eagle rubies in sapphire qualification the time we got to our first board plan. And so Mark and JC at that time, I believe they were just Eagles, like Eagle 2500s.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling like, so, his spell, his spell and his energy, I guess, worked on me just because he is a you have to say
Commanding.
he is completely commanding, and he is a fantastic speaker. A
Mhm.
lot of the
He really is. Yeah.
a lot of the psycho people in worldwide, they are fantastic speakers. You know,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna throw, you know, I have to warn you, Danny, that I might just be completely, you know,
Uncensored.
bold and uncensored and raw, you know, and talking about everybody.
Totally. It's
Okay.
okay. We do that here. That's the importance of this. That's why even if, keeping them anonymous too kind of makes it a little bit easier to be like, hey, fuck you. Like club owner, I fucking hate that guy. Or my personal sponsor, Robert, I really fucking hate him. So, but I would also say this to their faces if I saw them and had the opportunity to as well.
Great.
But that being said, right, you can be as honest as you want here. And I feel like that's why I have this platform and why I want to people to be able to feel like they can be brutally honest here. Because what were we told in Worldwide, right? You can't say this. You have to say this. You have to look this way. You can't speak unless you're this. Like, there's just so many things that you have to fit into when it comes to Worldwide. And kind of going back to your guys' journey of even finding out your bridal shower. But like it's crazy, but you're right. Like the speakers one are incredibly good at speaking. They're very charismatic. These are people who have been so indoctrinated that they know what to say and they know how to say it. But realistically, they're saying the same shit every single time. And I feel like that's why he talks so fast, because maybe we won't notice that he said the same thing at the previous function. Wow. Okay. So you guys decide to launch in a business. And I forgot to say this ahead of time. Michelle, you're a teacher and you are an actor. These are two very, I feel like, unique careers that are very, like, there's so far that you can go within both of these career paths. And like you had said, Michelle, you wanted to go to grad school. Like that was your first goal and your first dream, which, by the way, amazing. And then you also had this concern for your then fiance, right? But now your husband's goals, right? Of you don't want him to stop acting. Was there kind of this inkling and intuition that you feel maybe was a red flag that maybe you bypassed, that you kind of felt like because you felt that way about it? Did you think that that was in a way foreboding for all of the things that you would go to see?
Yes, so a little background. I was a very anxious child, and that's bled into, that's who I am. I'm like anxious. I'm a little superstitious. I, grew up with immigrant grandparents, I was taught to be like very aware of your surroundings, be cautious of people. And then I meet my husband, who's very nice to everyone, no matter what. And and so I'm the more like cynical, realistic one. And especially when we were dating, I was always like, this gives me a bad feeling, of like multiple different things. So when my friend Evan, who was saying, oh, well, you should meet up with Mark and JC, I was like, that sounds great. But that feeling of like, if I tell this is it. I had that same feeling of actually when we were first dating. I had a feeling when Evan was telling me to, oh, but you should really talk to Mark and JC about this. Like they've done such great things, like financially, they're so well off. Like how many 27-year-olds do you know who could buy a car in cash? I was like, yeah, but if I tell Michael about this, that's it. And I had that same feeling when we first started dating. I was like, if once I start dating Michael, that's it. Like there's no more dating. Like this is it. And we knew each other for 5 years at that point, but so I had that kind of intuition. And, once I did tell him about it and he was actually really excited about it, in my mind, I was like, oh crap. Like I want our life to change, but this is not how I want it to change.
Right.
And once we were actually launched into business, Michael actually had a equity gig out of state for about 2 months. And I know that you actually counseled upline to the guy who talks real fast.
Guy who talks real fast, as well as Evan, as well as Mark. I talked to even the platinum in between Mark and the diamond who talks really fast. I counseled with him because there was a point where we actually went down the line when we launched into business, where we counseled up with the diamond. Then at that time he was a ruby, and then it moved down the line to the platinum in between, and then it moved down to Mark. So like we had different lines of like counsel and mentorship just kind of like go down the line. But yeah, I talked to everyone and they said like and Evan, and they said like, I think you need to stay. Like if you're really serious about your family and serious about your business, like, you know, don't get distracted by these little things over here, you know, follow through. It's like, you know, remember points, they didn't really start teaching point A to point B until like late 2015.
Yeah.
So, but at that time they were just like, yeah,
this is like fall of 2014.
Yeah. It was like, yeah, like early fall, yeah. And so, because I'm thinking of the timeline, but yeah, they like, you need to stay and like follow through within the business. And I remember taking that, you know, to heart, and I feel like, no, but this is like one of the biggest opportunities I've ever gotten in my career that I've been wanting to do ever since I was a child.
Right, and it's right out of college.
Right out of college too, and it's a lead role in a state I've never been to, working with some of the best Chicago and New York actors ever on a play that I love. So I'm like, I'd be stupid not to take it. So I took it, but at the same time, you know, I pride myself of being a really hard worker and a committed worker. And I was still like active in the business and within the partnership out there. So even while I was working on the play, I would still make time to, you know, talk to people, reach out to people, share my story, start conversations, deepen conversations, the whole gamut. Read, listen to Kate's, listen to audios, all this stuff. And which at the same time, I still felt like an outsider within the cast because, you know, I would try to share my story with the cast and they just kind of felt like, that's interesting. That's weird. Yeah. And, you know, and that was one thing where I just felt like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be an actor. And I literally battled that in my mind, which made me, once I was done with the contract, came back to Las Vegas and I'd be like, okay, I'm committing to this business no matter what. You know, I am all in all the time.
And I, oddly enough, did not like that at all. And
I bet.
Yeah, I was like really worried because like at this point we've known each other in 2014, we've met in 2005. So we've known each other for a long time, and I know that he needs those outlets, the acting, the performing arts, like those are both of our outlets, you know, and for him not to have that, like I've never known him not to be in some sort of performing you know, gig or event. And so it was a really interesting to see him kind of transform. And I knew who he was genuinely, but then to see him put on another persona for this business made me really uncomfortable. But at the same time, what could I say to him? Because I felt like I couldn't really say anything to him because, well, he's trying to better himself and he's trying to, you know, be a good man and be a good person and help people. And if I sow seeds of doubt, I'm not a supportive partner. And, you know, there was lots of things that I felt like I was stonewalled in saying and to speak my mind with my own partner. And so I'm like, well, I'll just like let him be. And it wasn't until years later where we finally were able to really open up to each other. So it took years to kind of be comfortable being honest with each other again, which blows my mind that happened.
Yeah, because Worldwide teaches you so much to, you know, copy and emulate this certain persona. It literally is the Stepford wife type of family that you need to, guys, you know, only talk to the guys, and, you know, women only talk to the women, which, you know, is great. It's fine. But then again, it's like when you talk to the guys, they talk about, you know, being exact, like manliest of men, and you have to be able, you know, a man takes care of his family. One thing that I remember Mark gave me counsel on when I talked to him about taking the contract out of state, the equity gig, and he said, like, you know, it's great to be a professional actor, Michael, it's great, but have you ever thought about being a professional man, like being a professional husband?
I'm sorry,
being a professional father. No, I remember this is a direct quote. And I remember just thinking to myself, huh.
Like,
no way.
Seriously.
Wow. As if somehow, some way your career impacts your personhood. Like the impact, you're right. They put such an emphasis on these gender roles specifically in Worldwide that like you said, when you're talking about counseling upline, you're right. We were taught, I'm a female, so I'd go up to my female upline. If I had a partner, my male partner would go to my male upline, or if I had male downline, they would go to my male upline. And there is no communication. And I was never really in a relationship through Worldwide. So I can imagine that, because they tell you don't talk to each other. Don't talk to each other about your emotions,
Right.
which I kind of feel like that's a toxic thing to teach people. I'm not a marriage expert, but Lord help me, I don't feel like that's right. They're like, well, don't go talk to your girls go talk to their girlfriends who are all divorced, and men are gonna go talk to their beer buddies, and like that's somehow gonna be more negatively impacting your relationship than what they are doing themselves. Because one thing that I've learned over time is that marriages in Worldwide are very toxic as far as like the upline goes. I would love to see, I mean, I don't, because you think about the horrendous things you're probably going to see if you were to really see what's going on behind their glass house that they're not showing us.
Very much so. I remember at one, I believe it was it was a regional that your upline did, the nightclub owner and his wife. They came to Vegas and they did a talk, and I remember his wife talking about why would I, use my husband as a human trash can, to dump everything that I'm emotionally going through, because that's not fair to him. That's not, of what he needs to do, go out and build the business. But I remember thinking in our mind, I was just like, no, but you need to let things out.
Yeah.
Your companion should be your best friend to
Right.
share everything that you're going through emotionally.
Which actually led to, years of back and forth between Michael and I about sharing our days with each other. Because of course, being a teacher, there are some bad days. And I felt like for a long time, I couldn't really share that with him because, like all we're taught is just talk positive. And I'm like, well, I need to vent for like 15 minutes, because people are shitty.
Yeah.
And that's reality.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to put on this like Stepford wife smile and pretend everything's okay.
Yeah, and you can't even vent to your upline too, because they don't want to hear
They
it.
don't want to hear it. So like so throughout business, I actually kept, and I'm very fortunate to have kept some of my close friends that I met through college, and I barely shared my story with them. I know one of them who turned out to be our matron of honor. I shared my story with her on a walk, and she was like, "That sounds great. Just be wary of pyramid schemes." And I'm like, "Oh, sure, it's not that, but I appreciate your concern." And then my other friend who lived across country then, he was like, "Oh, that sounds, again, like, oh, that sounds great. You need to make more money in America to get anywhere. Like, good for you." And he always had like business ideas, and he would always like change jobs every few years and work his way up different companies really quickly. So that's it. And I know I didn't want to share any more with them because I didn't want to risk my friendship being lost.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I never really told them anything more about what we were doing. I just always like, "Oh, we're just so busy. Like, I'm busy with school. I'm busy, doing this. So I have to see family," instead of like hanging out with them more. But I would be able to actually talk to them about work, not about anything else in my life. And the only people I could talk to about the business was our sponsor, Evan. He actually got out of business 2017.
2017, I think, after family reunion.
Yeah. And it took a while actually for us to start talking to him again, because again, we were told if someone leaves, basically don't ask questions. Even if you were friends before,
don't talk to them.
Like, well, they're not in the business now, so why should you seek out them? It's just like, but we were friends. Like, we had a life before this, and I want a life after this. And so it took a while for him and I to get back on track and talk again. But then once we were able to talk again, like more in 2018, well, Michael and I were still in the business and Evan was out. I was able to vent some of my frustrations to him, and he would listen. And of course, like, he wouldn't take the advice too far. He never said like, "Oh, you should quit." He said, like, maybe you should check your options again, stuff like that. So he was a nice, supportive friend.
Yeah. And keep in mind, it's like these weren't friends as the Crown guy would always refer to, your beer drinking buddies.
No.
These were friends that we
performing arts people.
We were performing arts people, but we also had deep layered connection over things of our life,
decades long
real friendships. So it's not like somebody, like, once they quit the business, it's like you completely write them off, like they're out of our lives.
Right.
And that's a big pain that was always there. Like when they leave the business, that they're a pariah. You never can talk to them ever again.
Yeah.
It's true. Yeah. And that's what I feel like. It's so unfortunate too, because we do develop, and even if it's somebody that, like you said, you're friends with these people before the business, and they're trying to they're trying to instill this expectation that, oh well, they quit, they're not good people like you knew them to be, which is wild to me. But then it's the people that you do get to know in the business, like you become friends with our cross line, we become friends with our downline. Like when we leave, we're almost afraid to talk to people. I know when I left, I didn't tell my downline I was leaving, and I regret that every single day. I think I finally reached out to almost every downline that I had. But there are people who I hear their stories and they're like, yeah, we told our downline we were leaving. We took them with us. I was like, I wish I would have done that.
Yeah.
But I agree. The way that they view friendships and the way that they make you view people outside of the business is very, very sad. And which is crazy because you guys, we always talk bad about the business, but there really was a period of time where these people were our heroes. So what was your guys' kind of honeymoon phase like, and how long was it? And like, I'm sure you guys at that point were living on cloud 9.
Oh, huge.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I mean, ever since that first board plan, I felt like, oh, I got to make a change. This guy, like, I love this guy, but I just loved how animated he was, and that's obviously what caught my eye. The Diamond Who Talks Really Fast. I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, I get his energy. Like, I understand. I feel like I could be best friends with this guy. And Mark could be that way too, because Mark in school was, who took us through the process, our friends. He was, always the joker of the pack,
the goofball.
Yeah, the life of the party all the time. So, we could connect that way. But and when we got into business, I always wanted to make everything fun about the business. Like I wanted to add like much more of happy times, like anything that it got towards like media, and like we would ever like, do anything like, and especially when we went to our first FED, I was just kind of like pumped, especially with all the media that was going on, just like, ooh, what could I do? Like, I want to get on that stage. I want to get on that stage. Like, please, there's just something that tells me like I want to be able to do. And the honeymoon phase, I think we carry.
Well, for you.
For me, yes, that's right.
Mine came a little later. Interesting, but go ahead.
Yeah, but in all honesty, the honeymoon phase really carried on, I want to say, because it was so funny because we launched into business and then like immediately I took that equity gig. Like we had our first FED and then I was gone, but still still doing, the habits obviously within the partnership.
But once you came back, you were really intense and fully committed.
Yeah, I went after it. So but honestly, I think the honeymoon phase like really died down maybe around the middle of 2015, because then it just became work,
Yeah. Well, after we got married.
Yeah, because I got so focused. We only launched one leg in that whole time, and then they quit like literally like 2 months later.
Yeah.
And then we got married, and so we just kind of felt like, oh, what do we do? Yeah. And then literally we were on our honeymoon. And then you can say like our honeymoon phase was still carrying on during our actual honeymoon, because while we were on our honeymoon, we went to Disneyland and we were still having meet and greets on our honeymoon.
Yeah.
Like we were talking to people, reaching out to people on our honeymoon. And like we would take a break from Space Mountain and then go off to a Starbucks outside the park and have a meet and greet with somebody. And it was
so wild. I'm sitting here listening to you say those words. Our honeymoon phase carried on into our honeymoon. You guys were in it. Like you guys were dedicated. You were in Disneyland thinking about the business.
Because we didn't want to be, we didn't want to disappoint our upline, as they indoctrinate us so badly.
And also the fact that we knew them, I knew them more from college. And once I started dating Michael, he knew them as well. We went to their wedding together. So we knew them and we liked them, and we wanted to be the good examples that we could be. And we were, I was always a good student and I wanted to be a good student for them, and, to show if it worked for them. And we knew their dynamic before business.
Oh yeah.
And we knew how shy JC was. And well, if she can, expand her personality and become more comfortable in the uncomfortable, then maybe like I can do that too. And for me, like my my honeymoon phase was a bit touch and go, because Michael said, he immediately left. And I was like, oh no, I don't want to do it by myself. But I had my sponsor who we would always like hang out and go to grocery stores at like 9 p.m. and try to talk to people, which obviously never worked.
Fresh and Easy, if anybody remembers Fresh and Easy.
Oh, such a good grocery store.
It's fantastic.
So because they were open 24 hours, we're like, oh, perfect. We go like 11 p.m. No big deal. And Spear the cashier. But
Yep. Or Spear like anyone by the frozen section.
Yeah. So at least like I had a friend to help out with that. But I remember actually our first FED, one of the reasons why my honeymoon phase came later. The first FED, there was a guy who came on stage who I don't remember his name, but he talked about a certain university or a camp or whatever it is.
Oh, if we could say his name, I'll say Randy Gavins.
So he's not in Amway. He's not in Worldwide, but he's associated with, he partners with, etc. And they allow him to speak at their functions. I don't think he's spoken at a function in a while.
No, I think he spoke at the last function that we went to, which was 2021 FED. But his time got shorter and shorter and shorter.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's Rick Green that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can say his name. Okay.
Yeah,
great.
Rick Green.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, because what's funny is I was talking about this to somebody else that we had mentioned Rick Green, because we say Paul Sika here too, because Paul Sika is he's an author. He's, even though he's in Worldwide, he's not in Worldwide, I guess. Same with John Maxwell, and then Rick Green, he's kind of his own guy. And what's really interesting that I have learned about even John Maxwell is these people speak for multiple MLMs, not just Worldwide like they're telling us. And it makes me sad. So yeah, we can talk about Rick Green.
Yay. Hate that guy.
So we were at FED in October of 2014, and Rick Green comes on, and, it's like, it's not part of Amway, Worldwide. He just wants to talk about like this great American school type of thing. And I'm listening to this like ultra patriotism that borders on fascism. And I'm like, what the heck is this? And I'm like, I grew up, my father loves history. My grandparents literally lived through the war. They lived through a famine. They were in refugee camps in World War II. They came to America, and I'm like listening to this guy wax on about how amazing these founding fathers were. And I'm like, have you not read history? Because they're assholes who happen to have power and money. And yeah, they were against the British and they wanted to form a nation, and they did it. Great. But you can't say that they were amazing human beings, because they weren't.
They were gods. Yeah.
Yeah. They're like, and back in 2014, he was already talking about, how this kind of history is not taught in schools, how great the founding fathers were. It's always, sullied by actual history. And I remember writing in my notebook, and I found it during 2020 clean out when we were all in lockdown. In my notebook, like, what the hell is he talking about? This is ridiculous. Like, so Amway approves this guy, and like Worldwide likes him. And that was like a huge red flag for me. And we just got into business, and I'm like, if they allow this guy to talk, how can I stand on stage and talk when I don't agree with this? And I can't ever voice my opinion about it either.
Gotta always hold your tongue.
Yeah. And so that was like no honeymoon phase. It more turned into like, well, if Michael is into it, I'll be into it. I'll try my best. And then it really came to about I think it was 2017 or 2018.
Hmm.
I want to say it's 2018. Because 2017 I left teaching for a little while. I got back into it later, but in 2018 for a 90-day core run, I'm like, all right, I'll really, really devote myself because I was always on and off. I'm like, I'll actually commit. I'll do 100%, 100% of the time. And I'll do my best to get results. Because Michael has been working so hard for 4 years, and we've only gone 1,000 PV, and I want those results because it's not fair to him to keep doing all this by himself, basically. So I really put in like my effort. I listened multiple audios a day. I read more than I needed to. And I was asking questions and night owls after board plans, really being attentive, not daydreaming during the same thing that I've heard for the past 4 years. But then one time after a board plan during a night owl, I asked this question, and they actually encourage you, your upline encourages you, if you're in a board plan with newer people, maybe ask a question that will help them.
Help the newest person. Yeah.
Help the newest person. So I asked one of those questions, and the response back was kind of like, from Michael, was like almost in the tone of like, you don't know this by now?
Yeah.
And I want to be like, but you tell us to ask these basic questions, basically. Like, you insinuate, ask something that you might know the answer to, but maybe other people don't. And so that will be beneficial to them. And after that, I was like, all right, I'm not going to put in 100% because you tell us to do one thing. And then when we actually do it, you like give us this weird tone back. Like, we don't know what we're talking about. I thought we were on the same page, but clearly there's like, you think you're better than me? No. So after that, I stopped. So my honeymoon phase was 4 years later, and it lasted 3 months.
It lasted a core run.
It lasted a core run.
Wow. I could see why it didn't last very long. Yeah. Gosh. And you said something that really stuck out to me was, how can you speak on stage when you do not agree with this? And I feel like that's so common now that I'm speaking with people who leave, is like, I know that when I was like, I'm going to get on that stage, I'm going to tell my truth, but realistically, I don't think I would have been able to. My truth does not align with Worldwide Dream Builders and their religious aspect. And God, I curse a lot. Okay. I could not fucking imagine if I was going to go on stage and try to be all fucking kosher and shit. That was the hardest thing for me. I mean, okay. I understand y'all out there, especially my parents. Sorry. There's definitely a time and a place. I mean, if you guys heard my episode with my dad, I apologize like a number of times. I'm like, I'm so sorry, Dad.
That's a fantastic episode. It's great.
Yeah.
Your dad is
But
fantastic.
oh, thank you. He's great. But no, it's like I had to, just like, everybody, we have to change who we are to be in the business. You have to change your dialogue, the way that you say things. You can't say things a certain way. And I always kind of look back and think like, you're right. I don't think I could have spoken on stage and said the things that I feel and wanted to say, because they didn't align with Rick Green. They didn't align with Paul Sika. They didn't align with the crown guy or the club owner or the guy who talks really fast. Like, I always wonder too, what these people were like before the business. Obviously, the guy who talks really fast, he was indoctrinated since day one. His parents were diamonds, right? They're like OGs of the business. But I think about people like the club owner and his wife. I specifically think about his wife because she was 18 when she got in this business, still so young. She has never really had any real life experience without this. And I think about the misogyny that is pushed down by her, like you, Michael, were talking about. And I wonder if she ever feels guilty for the things that she's pushing onto us like that, or if it's something that, she's so brainwashed she has to believe it, or if she's just as guilty as some of these men in the business pushing this agenda too. It's so crazy. Like, these lines are so blurred with these people, but you're right. That really hit the nail on the head with that one. And so now that you guys so your honeymoon phase lasted such a short period of time, and you guys were in for a total of 7 years, right?
7.5.
7.5 years. Yeah.
7.5 years. Wow. So how did you handle the rest of the time? I have to ask.
Oh, goodness. Well, because as you can understand, our dynamic was like very tough because she was struggling on the inside of just with the whole business, the whole lifestyle of it all, which is completely understandable. And I
well, we literally had arguments where I'm like, I'm not a Stepford wife, And I was like, just because I like to cook and bake doesn't mean, I want to just like be subservient to you. And
it's like, we can't use this money for all this baking, all this other meals, because we have to use it for our kiddo.
I'm also like a stress baker and cooker. So like, that's where I'm like, I will make a meal and take 4 hours if I need to, like, decompress.
It's her time to like, to relax and to rest cooking, which is fantastic.
It's a benefit to you.
I love the benefits of it, even though it's like, like, how can I eat all this when my body is literally falling apart by eating all this damn soy bars every day?
God, yeah. And he would get on me about like cooking actual meals because we had all these snacks.
All the protein bars, meal shakes, all the damn disgusting tortilla chips and the
like, and the thing is, so I have food allergies and intolerances, and one thing I can't have in a fake form is soy, and soy protein is in almost every single thing. And the vitamins actually have, I can't have pitted fruits. So like cherries and peaches and plums and stuff. So one of the main vitamins has cherry in it, and I can't have that. And so when they say like, oh, buy the expensive things like vitamins and makeup, or vitamins and excess, or vitamins and this, like, I can't even have the vitamin.
Right.
And heaven forbid I should seek out a different brand of vitamins that I can have, because that's sacrilege. And so I remember I was talking to this girl who was downline of Mark and JC, and she lived in out of state, and we met her at a function, and she had intestinal issues and digestive issues, but she would eat the soy protein and she would just suffer through bloating. And she's like, one day I can afford not to, I can afford other things for my business, and I could eat real food, basically. And I'm paraphrasing, but that was kind of the mentality they taught. So, choke it down, like suffocate your own self for the betterment of the future. But there was no real future to be had because everything was a question mark. And at one hand, oh, well, it's up to you how much you want to succeed. But on the other hand, it's like, you can't control the results. Right. You can't control if people are going to call you back. You can't control if they're going to fall out of the process. But meanwhile, what was such a struggle for us, and for me to see Michael go through this really was so disheartening. And again, I can't really say much, but for him to be out there after work, he got a day job. He would go out after work. Maybe he would come home to change and eat real quick, but he would be at the house like 11 p.m., midnight, sometimes even later. And we would hardly ever see each other. And he would go out and talk to people all night long. And he's like, okay, I got like 3 numbers. And then maybe one would actually sit down. And he was doing this every single day for years. And the fact that I feel like we didn't get traction because we were actually honest people who suck at lying.
Trying to put on a face,
trying to put on a facade that was obviously a facade to many people. And we attract who we are in a way, and we attracted more honest people, like who weren't assholes and who didn't want like to live in like corporate America type of thing. So the fact that we weren't really getting actual results, and to see Michael just beat himself up about that was years and years of watching that happen and not being able to say anything, even mentioning like, hey, do you think maybe we could like take our feet a little bit off the pedal, blew up into a huge argument.
No, we can't stop. We have to go all in. We have to go 80 miles per hour. Yeah. We need to go diamond like yesterday.
Yeah.
Like we need to grow in this. And, and that's where obviously you were the most amazing at, honestly, just because, you saw me on those days where, Mark wasn't really giving me enough after like the 10th time or 1,000th time where I would literally like hate Mark and say like, hey, I've been talking to so many people and, I feel like, nothing is, really happening. I'm doing everything right. Yeah. And, so let me break down, especially like they always said, like when you build the business and you go out and have it, when you're actually out there building the business, it's a third, right? So I actually did the math on this where technically you are, and listening to enough huddle Kates and like training Kates, like I listened to freaking everything.
Yeah.
I dove myself into every single audio, every single training. I was always there at every second look, regional, always in the huddles, even when these were the days where you could actually record those things, which obviously they stopped, but everything was a third. So if anything that you wanted to actually get traction and growth in the business, I needed to talk to 90 people. I needed to share my story to 90 people a month, share your story with 3 people a day, and increase that to 270 people to share your story with, which is a month, and which is sharing your story to 9 people a day, because you'll have 3 that are immediately looking, 3 that are just curious, and then 3 that are negative. So you get 3 contacts a day. And then you feel you can, go by that, and then break that down even more. That's 15 conversation starters a day. Share your story to 3 people, and those 3 are looking, 3 are curious, 3 are negative, 3 that you just start the conversation, doesn't deepen, 3 that you start your conversation, it deepens, but you don't get to share your story. Which is a total of 450 conversations a month. And listening to enough audios and, talking to to our upline and listening to everybody, it's like, it is a numbers game, but at the same time, they have to coach you to like be relatable, don't think about that. And I would feel so horrible when even Mark would, throw it in my face and bring up like, well, Alex, like, you're a professional actor. Like, this should be easy for you. This should be just fine.
Hold on a second. So you really said that to me?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Multiple
times. Like, come
What?
on. Like, your business is all about, being with people and telling stories and all that type of stuff, which, make me feel just even more freaking guilty.
Yeah.
And the times when we would take somebody through the process, great couple, like a great couple to their standards, were like, ooh, they're sharp. They're real sharp, because they dress sharp, they sound sharp, they look blah, 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 blah. And then by the time they get to like a first follow-up, they drop out of the process because now they've seen Amway, they've seen that it's worldwide, they've seen the board plan, they read the book, listened to the audios, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, it's just not right. And then they come to us thinking, to tell them, we told them that they drop out of the process after that. And they come to us and say like, well, was there something in the process that maybe was a red flag that you missed? Was there something that you said? Was it something that... So the responsibility falls on us, which, yes, you can take the high road and take the blame, and you're like, oh, what could I have done differently? But at the same time, it's like, this is like the 70th person this month that we're experiencing this with.
Yeah.
And you really, and you can only put the blame so much on yourself, where you feel...
So the red flag wasn't Amway? Which, okay, I forgot to ask this, going back, like, you're right, you're taking these people through the process, guaranteed it was the word Amway. They're like, I've heard of this before. When you guys had first originally kind of started this kind of, I know we're bouncing back and forth, that always happens, but how long did it take for you guys to find out that it was Amway, and had you guys heard of Amway beforehand?
Here's what's funny. Okay, so we went to our first meet and greet. It was a second meet and greet.
Okay.
We had our second meet and greet. We had dinner with my parents that same night. And I told my parents, we're about to go meet up with our friends, talk about a business opportunity. And literally, I remember our parents saying like, well, as long as it's not Amway, that's great. And we hadn't heard of Amway.
No.
Did not know of Amway. And then my parents was like, oh, it was something that our friends, like back in the day in Virginia, I grew up in Virginia, that they tried to, get us into. And it was all based on products, obviously, because Amway's business is products. And so we were just like, oh, okay, that's fine. But then we got so immersed and so captivated by just Mark and JC. And then from the board plan, like when the Diamond, at that time, the Ruby, said Amway, it went over our heads. Like, we
and then we're like, well, it must be different now.
Right.
Because it's also worldwide. And we're like, okay, well, they clearly have a better structure now. I don't see anyone like storing products in a separate room. It's not how it used to be. So it's less products and more talking to people. So at least that's different. So maybe it's better.
Yeah, maybe they went through a whole like change from the inside out, cleaned up shop.
But yeah, so it was the first board plan, and we didn't have like any history with it. And I remember telling my sister about it, and her sending me like Reddit articles,
Yeah.
Reddit threads. And I'm like, oh, you just don't understand.
Yeah. And I remember looking at the catalogs because we had the old school, black info box,
Oh,
where we
yeah.
got our info, the books and the catalogs. I remember looking through the catalogs. I'm like, holy crap, yeah. It kind of
Sounds
it
great.
sounds great. It kind of reminded me like back in school when you had to fundraise things in school, and it was just like,
Yes.
buy this cookie dough, buy
Yeah.
all this stuff. So I just
Gift
felt
wrap.
like gift wrap. Oh geez. And so I remember looking through all this, like, oh yeah, oh my gosh, we can go all of this.
Totally like do this. Like,
But in all honesty, there were some products that we legitimately loved. And like if anybody remembers, like from back in the day, Amway had Nutrilite had this antioxidant juice
it
that
was so good.
it was so good. It was like a pomegranate flavor or something and a mango
It
flavor.
was like a mango flavor.
Oh, so good. But then they transferred those into like the twist tubes.
Yeah.
And those were still good. And the excess, oh yeah, we were like addicted to those excess.
We always loved coffee and caffeine.
Mm-hmm.
We never liked Red Bull because just the taste for me it tastes like cough syrup, and that's gross.
Just too much.
But yeah, we're like, this is great. Like we need to stay up, for 20 hours. Might as well.
we understood the mentality of like, you move your money of where you're spending over here, fund yourself on your own store. That's just obviously makes sense. And it just, I don't know, it never really struck a problem with us
until much later.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. So you found out it was Amway. Amway was not the problem. You find these energy drinks, which are fantastic. I had to force myself to like Excess. I now look back and I'm like, I was never a fan of Excess. I convinced myself I was. And now you're starting to see, you see red flags a lot sooner, Michelle and Michael. You're living cloud nine. This is great. I still can't believe he said that you are a paid actor, that you should know how to do this, which further shows me that they are fake. Because isn't that the idea of acting, is not being yourself? You're being a character, you're being something else, which is clearly what they wanted you to do. They're not acknowledging that the red flag has always been the word Amway. And you're continuing through this process. You guys really became a prominent couple in your line of sponsorship. And kind of as you're going through the motions, what did, like, maybe from years like 2, 3, and 4, what did those years look like?
Horrible.
Well,
like in retrospect, like
I was not expecting that.
Oh, because I'm thinking back, like right when you said that, Danny, I just think back of all those nights, like a lot, like Michelle said earlier, of how all those late nights of just like going to Targets, going to Walmarts, going to like Whole Foods and all those supermarkets and like REIs and malls, just going about everywhere. And at the same time, Uber and lifting to earn extra money so we could also get out of debt, pay off our debt, garage sales, whatever we could to sell things on OfferUp and all of that. And just remember how stressed and how exhausted and how tense we were, hardly seeing each other.
Yeah.
Hardly, having any date nights really. Like they would indoctrinate us in the business, like your date nights are meet and greets.
Yes. And also like going out to talk to people. So in Vegas, there's a few like, open air malls.
Yeah.
And so we would go there, and me, I would be like, great, we get to have a date and hold hands and, la-di-da. But then half the time, Michael wouldn't even be focusing on what I was saying because he was like, oh, there's a couple. Let's go talk to this couple. I'm like, I'm in the middle of a sentence. Like, what do you mean there's a couple? Like, can't we just be together?
Yeah.
Even sitting down to eat dinner when we were able to go out.
Don't think about it. Talking
to the waiter, to the waitress, and the server, and just like, making everyone aware. And it was just like, but we have to do this, this is just part of what we have to do. So like on the inside, horrible, right? On the outside, we were making like social gains, right, in our group, because even though we weren't getting a lot of tactile results, our upline Mark and JC were growing, and then the guy who talks really fast and his wife were growing and becoming diamond. And so we were there for a lot of these pivotal moments, we qualified, mostly Michael qualified for every single 90-day core run. So we were in, after a core run, there's an incentive where you get to join your upline and maybe even, upline and then the next upline and the whole group who did all what they needed to do for those 90 days.
Right.
And just hang out and have fun and spend some quality time with each other. Excuse me. So we were always around. And they knew that we were working hard, even though not getting results. So there was kind of like a honeymoon phase in that fact that we were supposed to be, I feel like we were, no one ever said this, but we were supposed to be one of their crowning achievements.
Well, actually, a lot of our cross line who were growing, a lot of our cross line who were growing as well, which put Mark and JC to emeralds. They came up to us constantly and said, like, you're going to be leg number 4. Like, we know it, like everything that you guys are doing, like, and at the same time, we legitimately loved all of them too. Like, we loved them because we started out almost all at the same time. A lot of us, like all their other platinums, like we start out around the same time. So
it's kind of like a like having a group in school, like you come in at the same time, you kind of like graduate at the same time. It's like it's that group of people that you're always seeing.
You always see, especially
you see out and about, even like, so you can wave hi to each other. So
and Mark and JC had a leg. Their first platinum were like thousands of miles away. Like Mark and JC prided themselves on this leg. Like, they're thousands of miles away, and look how much they just grew like crazy. And like when you were talking about earlier, Danny, about the times where we had such great times in the business. Like, I remember sometimes, like, when we got done with the function and we would hang out at like an In-N-Out, there would be some times with those other legs of Mark and JC, like we would just hang out and talk, and we would just have a ball.
Right.
Like, we would, like, because those were times where I could be myself with them, and it was fantastic, and it was non-judgmental.
Right.
And we were just like, man, if we didn't have this little business thing going on, it's like we could be like great.
Right. Because you become friends. Like again, I know we shit on these people, but you guys, these were our best friends at one period of time. Like you said, you would go hang out with your upline, and you're right. If there was no business, we would be besties. Like, this would be a good time, especially when your upline is very similar to you. My upline were all my age. Like, I remember like going on our first, like, driving the miles to a spring leadership. Just being in the car, talking, laughing, having fun. That was fun. But one thing that somebody pointed out to me, I can't remember who it was, but somebody in an episode that we did was like, it never really was a friendship because we never got to actually hang out. I was like, that's so true. I never hung out with my upline if it was not about business. It was never, we're going to go just chill. We're going to just go hang out. It was, we have to go dream build. We have to go do something that's business related. And it's like, that was all fake. But during the time, it didn't feel fake. It felt like you could really, like you said, be yourself and let loose. And you felt safe with these people. And I could see how that kind of blurs the lines with maybe at any point when you started to feel concerned, you're like, no, but these are good people. Like, is that something that you guys struggled with, where maybe you, Michelle, were like, I'm having a bad feeling about this, or did it even come out soon? Like, how long did you wait to say, hey, I don't feel right about this?
Well, I would try to voice my concern to Michael because we were together and we were friends first and couple second, and we always like just shared stuff with each other.
And we created we always wanted to create an environment as husband and wife where we wanted to let the air open. We didn't want anything repressed. We wanted to have a non-judgmental, open area.
But it was hard, of course, because it was from what we were taught and from his mindset of don't question, don't badmouth. These are people that you should be looking up to, so therefore you can't say anything negative about it. So yeah, it was really hard to actually talk to him about it. I know very early on in the business, less than a year being launched, I was talking to my upline JC about sex basically. And I've had some issues with pain, and she basically said, "Oh, you just have to like relax and let him do his thing," basically. And then she gifted me some stuff, which was kind of funny because I did not expect that from her at all. And even when we knew her in college, she was a very reserved person. So then I remember talking to her about that again a little bit later, like in a few years. And basically through the readings and through what she was saying, it was basically she was advocating for maritable rape, of just give in to him, just relax. And he needs it. Even if you don't want to, he needs it. So that, like, years before 2020 happened and the pandemic happened and we really rethought things, that was the definite breaking point for me of like,
Yeah.
I can't talk to my husband about, hey, maybe I'm not in the mood for this. Maybe I'm not in the mood because I never see you outside of meetings. Maybe we don't have
Right.
a connection anymore because now everything has to be the business, and heaven forbid I should open up about my feelings about this. And I can't be honest with you. Like, that's not the reason. The reason is, oh, he's a man, so he needs sex and you need to give it to him as his wife.
Right.
And
Wow.
of course it's like, that's what she was taught. And so she
Right.
what she was taught.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can never say that to anyone downline of me. I would never. I would say, go see a gynecologist, go see a physical therapist, go see a psychologist, like go see a counselor, like
See a licensed
a
practitioner.
licensed practitioner
Yeah.
help you with this. Not, oh, well, based on the Christian BS, not even psychology books of actual doctors at all. No, it's like pastors and their wives.
I think her favorite book was a woman after God's heart.
Well, there was many of my
many of those
favorite books that I just absolutely loved and did not throw against the wall.
So long
Yeah.
insecure.
Yeah.
So
I read that one too.
yeah. So all these things, and I'm just like, what are you talking about? Like, if he
That's
needs
dangerous.
if he needs a release, it's called his hand. Like, I don't need to be a part of this.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong. Like, that's dangerous to teach people. I mean, so much pain. And there can even be pain that isn't caused by endometriosis. It is just pelvic pain, pelvic floor. Like, there's just such a wide range of things that can happen. And it's like these people don't care that you feel pain. They care that they're pushing their, I'm going to use the word patriarchal here. They're pushing their patriarchal like position. They and again, we've had other guys on here too, like Fisher was very open as well when Hope was coming on and being like, this is not okay. And he was like, the men made me feel like I had to be this way. Is that kind of how things were for you, Michael, where you had your upline kind of pressuring you to maybe go against your own personal moral values?
100%, absolutely. And I had to emulate this certain ideal and this certain shape of what a man was supposed to be. And I had to adapt very much of being like a man's man. And it's funny, Michelle would always get on me about how short my hair was cut, because I would sometimes look at all these different leaders and all their hair were like so super short. And so there were like some times where I was just like, oh, I'll just cut my hair like super, super short, which I was trying to make the excuse like, it's summer, it's fine, let it be, so, let it be fine. I'll live with it. But no, it just increased of more discomfort. And I wasn't aware about how that counsel was given to Michelle about her having to, basically, just deal with it and put up with it in order to service me. Because, if that was the case, I never wanted that to be the thing. It made me just so angry at within the whole structure and the whole business of coaching of what was supposed to be. And
Yeah.
You know, and of course they always teach like you have to lead, you have to go out there and, you know, be the heavy hitter, be the leader of your family and go out there every single day. So I felt like, okay, I'm not seeing her every day, but it's all for good reason. You know, it's
Yeah.
going to be for something. We're going to get the rewards. You know, we may not have a lot of time now, but, you know, we'll have time later. And that's what they would always like reassure us with it. It was just like, come on. If it took you like even 10 years, 10 years to go platinum,
you'll be 35. Like, wouldn't that be worth it?
Wouldn't that be so worth it? And then I thought to myself, like, to be a platinum when you're 35, especially when you have children and you have to live this other lifestyle, it's fucking miserable. Yeah, because you still have no time. On top of that, you have a child or multiple children, and you are, you know, ingesting all these products that, you know, depending on your own dietary restrictions, depending on your own body type, that are still not healthy. And then you're gonna have to go through this whole lifestyle, especially if you're quote unquote a winner. You have to go out and do, you know, above and beyond, you know, if you work at 7, if you work at 7, get up at like 5 a.m., do whatever you can to get those wins in before you go to work, you know.
Ah, yes.
Be
I
core and
remember
more.
that.
Core
Core and
Core and
more.
more. Hardcore.
Right.
That's how
It
we
was
live.
ridiculous. And I can imagine too, like you guys are just so nice. Like you guys just have a chemistry. Like I can imagine that like during that time, you both are being given separate types of like counsel. So it's like it's not even like either of you knew what the other person was getting. And you couldn't go to each other and be like, hey, so the homegirl said that I have to submit when I don't want to. I can imagine that conversation would have been like, yikes. Like, but then I'm sure they encourage you, hey, don't tell them I said that. Don't tell them I said that, which is so scary to think about. And it's not just the council sessions that are the the council sessions are really where you learn where your upline, who they are. That's where you truly learn who is actually in your life and who's quote coaching you, because you get a different side of your upline in a council session versus who they are on stage or at an event or even at an incentive. And one thing actually kind of going on to incentives and qualifying for incentives, you guys shed light on something for me for an incentive that made me so mad. So you guys found out that, so when, I think we've talked about this before, but when you go double eagle, there is this thing called moving up. Everybody wants to go to moving up, right? Everybody double eagle and above gets to be there, get to hang out with your upline, whatever. You guys found out that we, as these people who are qualifying, are the ones who have to pay for it. How does that look?
Yes.
An expensive hotel.
Expensive hotel. I believe, oh goodness, now the name has escaped me. I think it was called Paradise something, but it was right there in the middle of San Diego. And yeah, once you go double eagle, you pay for your whole room, and in order to reserve that in advance.
Let me just say, it's never said that you pay for it. It's always addressed as you get to go.
You get to go.
You know, like you qualify for, you know, so it's insinuated that, oh, because you qualify for it, you are given it, you know, and no one ever talks about, oh no, you have to pay your way to stay at a hotel that, you know, but right before this, like you're budgeting and you're staying at like Best Westerns and Motel 6s, and you know, you're trying your best to live way below your means, even if you're platinum, and you're saving money on tickets, on like plane tickets and stuff. So now you're going to somewhere that costs definitely at least $200 a night, if not more,
way more,
where the diamonds are staying, just so you can spend time with them. Like, why couldn't you like be a quarter of a mile down the road?
Oh yeah.
Is that going to
because that
negatively affect you?
Yeah, because that resort is like hooked with the beach and they have all these different activities. So it's just like, yeah, it's this time. But it's like you're spending a lot of that time at freaking meetings and talks of the same shit that they talk about every single freaking day on the Kates and the audios.
Then you have to sit there and listen to the diamonds wax on about, oh, well, we're building this and we have this construction going, and oh yeah, we're building our like second basketball court. It's like, who cares? Like, how is this helpful to me? Oh, it's you know, dream building. It's like, well, I don't want that.
Yeah.
Like, it's not relatable to every single person.
They talk it up at Moving Up, like, yeah, all these meetings, you know, all these talks, and it's just like, it's elevated association, it's elevated talks, you know, different talks that you wouldn't, it's hilarious, different talks that you wouldn't get
here
elsewhere, and which is ridiculous. And you know, I can't prove it, necessarily that
It's
my
hearsay.
upline, my upline, because I quit Kate. I don't have that damn recording anymore.
No.
But I remember it full-fledged. He told me that well, if you're double eagle, you're making money. So if you're on your budget well enough, it should be no problem to get your room over there for moving up. You're a double eagle, you got the money. But it's like
I don't buy it.
not even if you have 12 legs or even just doing the bare minimum of 100 PV, that's not a lot of money. Even if you're just, even as I say, it takes you a year to go double eagle. By that time, even if you're not even debt free or whatever, like that's still not necessarily enough. So you still have to, switch things around within your own budget in order to to properly go there and not stress.
It could definitely put a strain on your finances, but they don't market it like that at all. And it's
Nope.
Yeah, it's all these, like, they're so careful with their vocabulary. So it's all between the lines. It's never outright said. It's always insinuated. Like, when we counsel upline, it's never like, oh, don't tell your spouse. It's basically like, just walk the walk, like, just do it.
Don't say it, show it.
Yeah. And don't, they never say, like, don't talk about it, just do it. But that's the other side of that coin is don't talk about it. But
exactly.
they're just so careful with it.
They really are. It's sad because and when you're in these counsel sessions, right, they're being so dishonest on so many different levels, from the incentives that we are so excited about in the beginning, right? We're like, I want to go to moving up. I'm going to get double eagle because I'm going to be, moving up. And then you have people like the club owner who in his audios are claiming that you're going to make X amount at this level. We've done the math. We know that you have to have some serious effing downline, so depth, to reach these astronomical numbers that they're claiming their double eagles are making. But not only that, they're being dishonest with you guys about their own lifestyles. And I personally, I don't know if you guys had seen this or not, but and kind of going back to this topic of how we're being told by our upline that as women we have to submit. I have just this envisionment of a lot of upline having domestic violence in their homes. I think that that's probably happening quite a bit more than we think. And it makes me sad. It makes me so sad because I know that as a DV survivor myself, going into this organization was quite literally the worst thing I could have done for myself. Getting a partner who would follow these things, like when they wanted to get me back together with my ex-partner, he would have been the most dangerous person to be in this business because he was already a narcissist. He was already somebody who could show face as charismatic and then behind closed doors be the most abusive person. And that's, I wish I knew. Like, it's just so sad. What is your guys' kind of thoughts on that?
Things real quick. There was this time, a few times, that the guy who talks really fast and his wife were on stage, and he told the story about how when they were getting ready to leave for like a function or whatever, or maybe a board plan, and like their kids were crying and something happened, and it was just chaotic, right? And his wife told their child, like, I'm sorry, we have to leave. And on stage, he's like, don't ever tell our kids we're sorry that we have to leave, that we're building a future for them. And I remember with him saying that on stage, maybe it was exaggerated, I don't know, I wasn't there, but him using a specific tone on stage, I'm like, oh my God, like, that's horrifying. First of all, I hope he didn't do it in front of the kids. I'm sure he did. But, like, you don't say that in front of your child. You don't yell at your spouse in front of your child. And, like, the mom guilt is real. And, we're not parents yet, but working with kids for, over a decade and working with those parents, like, I see it and I feel it. And it's, it's so heartening to know that, like, you're a working parent, and that's really hard sometimes. And some days, especially in a chaotic moment, all you want to do is comfort your child, but you can't be there for them. That's a real feeling, and it should be noticed and confirmed. And it's human nature. So for him to yell at her at that vulnerable moment was so eye-opening to me. And I'm like, I thought you were a nice guy, And then also there was, we found out towards 2020, 2021, I was actually talking to a cross line who I knew before the business. And then once things started to get back in person, I didn't see her. I reached out to her and I was like, hey, what's going on? We didn't see you. Are you guys okay? She's like, oh yeah, we actually left. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I understand that can happen, especially at this moment, after 2020 and the shutdown and everything. I was like, yeah, definitely understand understand that.
It's like the biggest positive coming out
Yes.
of the pandemic is like
How many people left?
how many people left
Yeah.
and worldwide falling apart.
No.
Anyway.
He's happy. But yeah, I talked to her some more, and I basically I had to gain her trust in that she knew I was 1 foot out the door, at the same time, so that she could open up to me. Because I did not want to be like just topical, oh, we're left, but we're okay. I wanted to be like, no, are you guys actually okay? Did something happen? And so I let her know that basically it's okay to talk to me if you want to talk to me. And so this is what I heard, which is what she heard. So this is hearsay. It was a little game of telephone, and I don't know the specifics, but basically they left because they learned of a domestic abuse situation that where it got so bad that basically the female was told, suck it up, cover it up, and you're building the business for your kids. So kind of deal with it. And that was their last straw. They knew of some rumblings before this.
I remember. And I remember seeing her at a function where she had sunglasses on. It looked like heavy makeup on one side.
Yeah. So that was through our cross line about their upline and someone else cross line of them as well. And because of that situation, a lot of people left. And of course, it was explained away by some of the emeralds and the diamonds about, oh, they want to go a different direction, or oh, they took what they learned here and they want to start their own business, and that's just not okay. That's not what we do. So there was a lot of people that exited, including were they rubies?
Big guy? Oh yes, they were double eagle rubies. Yeah. We'll call them Jason and Leah.
Yeah, they left. They weren't the domestic abuse couple, but they were all kind of intertwined.
It was their downline who
Yeah.
had that issue. Yeah. So Jason and Leah were double eagle rubies, downline of Danny and Gracie, who were emeralds, downline of the diamonds, who talk really fast.
Yeah. So they were in it for years. And both couples, the ones who were a couple and left, and the ones who went through domestic violence, they were in it for years. And after 2020, once I learned about that too, I was like, okay, we have to find a way to get out, because of course the diamonds know the real story.
Yeah.
And they're just not allowing the real story to get out, because that would look bad.
Yeah.
They'll do anything to protect their money.
Yeah.
Their 4% divorce rate.
Yeah. I wonder why.
Yeah. So
that's crazy.
The toxicity is just, is bleeding through. And I remember one, they call it their end of the year kickoff, which is around December. And, it's like New Year's resolution, what to do. One leader who was downline of one of their other emeralds, because he and his wife were sapphires, and they got up and spoke, and to, I guess, create some sort of relatability. He said, I had the permission to say this on stage, and it's like hundreds of other people were there as well, so they could attest. But he said, just a couple days ago, my wife's mom was murdered and she's still here. What's your excuse?
Yeah.
And it almost felt like, why are we trying to find relatability and trying to
in trauma
in tragic events?
That has nothing to do with the business.
Yeah. Just to stay committed to your business and to your ownership. Yeah. Stay committed to your upline, stay committed to your team. It's no matter what happens. Yeah. And trying to bring out the fact of especially with the diamond who talks really fast, their relatives, one of their relatives, the wife's, I believe, grandfather dying of COVID.
Yeah.
And not treating the virus seriously
at
all. And why are they trying to use all these things in order to stay committed and not giving the understanding and the reality of the situation?
It's it really makes you question, where is their reality? Are they even living in the same place that we are? Because I don't know how much they can't see, how much they don't want to see. It's so hard to understand what they're thinking. And speaking of COVID, and we were invited to walk with our upline, Mark and JC, in like October of 2020. And, then we haven't seen each other in person in a long time. So like, great, we'll walk around a park. It's outdoors. It's fine. This is before the vaccines were out. Well, our upline Mark, he was in the medical field, but he doesn't have a medical degree. He was pre-med, so just biology and chemistry, right? And then he got a certification to do something in the medical field. So we're walking around and he's like, watch, after the election, this virus is going to go away. You're not going to hear about it. I'm like, that's not how viruses work. Like, like you say you're in the medical field and what? Like,
oh yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, like they're literally not living in this reality.
No. And that was literally the worldwide sensation. Yeah. One election day is going to change the whole virus. Don't worry. You're not going to be sick anymore.
It's crazy how they handled COVID. And so now that we're starting to kind of enter this COVID era, this is really kind of getting down to when you guys were going to be getting ready to leave. And so what was it that through COVID you guys started to see differently? And what was the, I guess, the downfall of your Worldwide Dream Builder time? What did that look like?
Oh, sure. I mean, it started out as such a conflicting time, such a huge conflicting time, because as you know, I was like all in, I was doing everything I could still to build our business and to grow and to grow.
So during the shutdown, we were both furloughed. But we both got Instacart.
Yep.
And you also got some other stuff.
I was still doing some Uber Eats and Lyft, doing whatever I could, to make more money. We got that, unemployment just as everybody, which, I still felt guilty about, but, it wasn't, what we needed to do. And then, of course, we didn't see our upline all the time, just through like Kate and, the Zoom, of course, the classic Zoom board plans and Zoom, all of that stuff, which then it was freaking hilarious how the tickets were still the same price, how we still had to pay all this money for functions when they were all zoomed in and they're all through the Worldwide app. And we just felt like, okay, we understood from the very beginning, like, okay, we're being told this doesn't go directly to you guys. It just goes to the fund of Worldwide, right? To fund for everybody's trip, the event itself, to pay for everything. Hence why all these functions, like $15 per person, it started out as 10, then to 15, then to 20, disgusting. And then
but now
all that, but now online is like, why is it still the same price? So all these things were starting to permeate a little bit more, and we still had enough money in our bank account, and we needed a new car, so we went out to get and bought a new car with cash.
Oh, we got a car the day everything shut down on St. Patrick's
Day, because we were living in Las Vegas. Vegas shut down. We literally bought Michelle and a used car that had been repaired, so it was like new practically, and we paid it with cash because we were taught, don't go into debt for a car. So we paid, I think the car was, we can be honest, it was like $10,000. And then that next, I think a couple months later, wasn't it?
Next year.
It was the next year. I needed a new car, and we had enough, money to buy another car, and we didn't go into debt for that one. We bought that one with cash.
Meanwhile, our credit is shoddy, but no one taught us about that. They just taught about that.
Yes.
So, but
same.
Yeah, we can get back to that, but yeah, it was still permeating. It's just like, we're not seeing our upline a lot. We're just zooming in, and the buildup. And mind you, I don't think we talked about it, but all throughout this time, still, Danny, I was actually getting like friends of mine, colleagues, reaching out to me like, "Hey, Michael, we're doing this play. We're doing this show. We'd love for you to be part of it. You don't need to audition, like,
because he's amazing."
Oh, you're amazing. But I would have friends reach out to me and say like, "Hey, let's do this show. Let's do this show." And it was still like getting paid, like we were still getting money to, to do these shows. And I'd say no, thinking of like, I'm committed to the business. I committed to this. So I turned down like all these other great shows, these great opportunities, just so I could stay committed to the business. And so, and this was still happening, especially with the pandemic. And then,
Well, also during the pandemic, Amway had this incentive type of thing where, you know, make up a commercial for your favorite Amway product. And and during the pandemic, Amway had this incentive, like make a commercial with your favorite Amway product. And Michael was all over it. Like we borrowed his dad's camera and was like, okay, in this scene, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, you obviously miss acting. Like it's been a little almost 6 years since he like acted on stage at this point.
Wow.
And yeah, and he was like directing me how to do this with the camera.
Yeah, because you didn't want to be on camera. So
I did not want to be on camera. So then we did like 2 scenarios with 2 different products, and we like submitted them. And when he spent time, editing them and everything, and he was so excited. And I wanted to like shake him, like, don't you see this? Like, don't you realize what's really getting you excited is acting?
Directing, editing, working in film.
Yeah. And honestly, it was then around that time where you were able to come to me and confess that you actually wanted to start a YouTube channel.
Yes, because obviously pandemic, I think YouTube's numbers shot up more than ever.
Of course.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Nothing else to do.
Nothing else to do. So, and streaming services. So like I immediately knew it's like, that's when, and it was actually starting to waver a little bit because my sister got married in Portland.
February of
2020, and Groundhog Day actually. And we didn't tell our upline because like, damn it, I don't want to miss my sister's wedding.
Yeah.
And it's only going to be for like 2 days. So we had money in the bank. We were like able to, do whatever. Because I was like,
we were able to stay at our friend's place because they were actually out of town. So we didn't spend any money on hotels.
Yep.
And it was like, of course, it's his sister.
It's my sister.
Like,
and especially she already lives out of state anyway.
Yeah. And also like, this is the fact, after years of being in the business, we knew if we told them the truth, what they would say.
Yeah.
Because before we didn't go to one of my friends' weddings from high school, which was going to be in Vegas because it was the same as a function.
And there was another wedding too. Another friend were getting married at Disneyland that we didn't go to because same thing.
Yep. And meanwhile, you could theoretically just go to another function. Like, because all throughout, like, say, September and October, they have these functions everywhere, every single weekend. So just because you miss yours doesn't mean you can't go to any other one.
But then again, it's like some people didn't have enough money to like drive or even fly to another city to go to that function,
Right.
So
they would go to the one that's closest to them that might not have been the direct upline of them, but they went to the one that's closer to them because it fit their budget.
Yeah.
But heaven forbid, we should actually see a friend's wedding that we've known for like a decade. And it was, so we knew what to tell them and what not to tell them at this point. And because like we have free will.
Yeah.
No one's the boss over us. And so at that point in beginning of 2020. But yeah, so then once things started to reopen, you were saying how you wanted to start a YouTube channel.
I wanted to start a YouTube channel just because like I've been watching enough YouTube videos to be like, this person, they get to talk about all this type of stuff. And I'm a huge movie buff anyway. So I've been ever since I was a kid. And anytime we get to talk about movies, I'm just all about it. And I just thought like, well, maybe can that just be one thing where I can start out this YouTube channel and just do this on the side? But of course, I can't be 1 foot in and 1 foot out, blah, blah, blah. So I was having this with myself. But then I just thought to myself and getting reassurance from Michelle that like, no, honey, you need, to do this. Like you need something in this outlet. And there were some times where even Mark would like ease up a little bit on me, just like a tad of just like, Michael, you need to give yourself some time to like, really, relax, reassess. Now the loophole in that relax and reassess is just like read a book, listen to an audio.
And also, I think it was also out of fear of losing us.
Yes.
Because you could tell we've been pounding the pavement for 6 years. And we are 1,000 PV and, we're not getting traction.
Yeah.
And they know that, you know, after 5 years, if there's no result or not much of a result to keep people, it's disheartening and people will leave.
And
Yeah.
here's another thing too. Remember, towards that end, our names were actually getting recognized finally, somewhat
By the
diamonds. Because at this juncture, they were starting to, at the end of 2019, actually, is when they transferred the focus, instead of the people business, as they've always done, transfer it over to the products. We need to start talking about the products. We need to start, like, because Amway had an issue with not focusing on the products, that it's all about business. That they had a beef with them about that. So that's why at that kickoff in 2019, they were talking about like increased numbers with customer volume. Like, we want to be known that, yes, we don't want to just talk about, helping people, but we also want to understand, like,
now we have these amazing products.
Yeah.
Now we do.
Oh, now we have these amazing products that we focus on.
After all this time.
Yeah, so I just thought, like, okay, screw it, fine. If I can't grow my business within people, then let me try to redirect my focus and with customers. And amazingly enough, like, our business was actually starting to like progress. Because before, we would like, finagle some things within customer volume, because that's exactly what they would
say. We fortunately had like my mom and his dad.
We had our parents that were supportive.
Were supportive, and they would sometimes order more than we knew that they were actually using, because they felt sorry for us. But then, like, through coworkers and stuff, we got some more PV, point value.
Yeah, because then I started making like gift baskets, and it was Christmas time, so I was starting to make like little gift baskets for everybody to try stuff, and I would talk to them about all this stuff, like, and I worked in, my day job was in sales, so I tried to use all of those, tactic, mentality and structure, and how to be able to, like, service somebody, what do they need, fill that need, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it actually started to grow in customer volume. Like, we were able to actually like get 300 PV in customer volume alone, minimum on top of our own like intake of 300 PV. So like our day one ditto would sometimes be like 500, 600 PV, and
that's
awesome. Like $1,700 a month. But of course, that would, the difference would come from, the profit that we would make from, and from the customer itself. And so we actually started to grow in that regard, and there came a huge contest going into family reunion. If you can sustain like having a huge standard of excellence of customer PV, and if you won the contest, you would win $500 grand prize, and we would announce your name during family reunion. And so I worked my butt off trying to earn it. And what was amazing, family reunion, and it was 2020 during Zoom, the diamond who talks really fast, his wife announced the winners, and we won the grand prize. We won the grand prize. And it was just like, holy snaps, oh my God. And then never got that money.
What?
Never got that grand prize money.
What the heck? That's jank. I hate that for you guys. The least they could have done was given you $500. Lord knows that you've put more money in their pocket than this measly $500. They claim that they're millionaire. That's sad. Yeah. And this was kind of your last real experiences with the business.
Yep. Yeah. That was one of the kind of things. And of course, Michelle would reach out to our uplines like, is there any update about that? Because
I reached up once, because it's also, you're in a position of, you don't feel comfortable. Someone that they owe you money.
Them.
Like, it's such an awkward position to be in, first of all, with anyone, but also for someone who's lower, to remind someone who's higher that, like, hey, where's my $500? I asked about it one time, okay, like, we'll look into it, basically. And then I felt like I couldn't ask again.
Right.
Could I have been annoying and bothering? Sure. But also, that's not me. Like, I can't do that.
Could we have hired the Sopranos to knock down a door or two? Sure. But we felt so bad.
Then we already spent the money on things that we needed.
Right.
And so it was like, oh, we have this money, so now we can actually get like a cabinet for the garage, and like this really nice chair that I wanted for our living room, because at that time we had a hand-me-down couch that was like 9 years old and had stains on it.
We were so bare minimum.
And it was like finally something nice and like and I'm like, this is the start of something new. And no. And then, so that was the fall of 2020 or summer 2020, the fall of 2020, you started a YouTube channel, and he was actually more open and honest with me about.
But then later on, we took another impromptu, like little trip to Flagstaff, didn't tell our upline just because like, you know what, screw it. We need like a weekend, like a weekend with each other, just out of state, just go on vacation. We missed out on so many other things. It's like, you know, we earned this. We got tired of this. And then by the time.
Can I just say too? So after that was October 2021. So it took, you know, another year of, you know, getting back in person, and, you know, things weren't the same.
Nope.
And I think they can tell, of course, but again, we can't talk about anything. So then we went to our trip in October, and then afterwards, you know, we were opening up more and more with each other this past year, between 2020 and 2021.
And at that time, Mark and I built like a council to where like I've qualified for like countless 90-day core runs. So it's basically like a check-in type of thing. It's like, hey, I did my thing. You know, everything is all cool. Everything's fine. You know, and so like I felt not as much guilt anymore as far as like I've been, you know, dude, I've been committed for so long. You should have like there should be no issues, etc. And you know, by the time that we went to like the 90-day core run incentive around Christmas time, and by like the 70th time that we get gifts from them that they got for free at the Achievers trips, you know, it's like
we get pens with Amway on it, magnets with Amway on it,
koozies with Amway on it.
And maybe like a notepad.
And a notepad.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And like store-bought, you know, Kroger treats. Yay.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right. That's wow. That's a lot. So you guys go to Flagstaff, and at this time, like, are you guys like kind of talking to each other? Like, at about what time are you guys like on the same page? You're both like, you know what? We need to just be done. And what does that look like? You know, you guys deciding you're going to be done, and how did you guys tell your upline that you were done?
Oh, yeah.
So between Flagstaff and telling our upline, which was in late December, we also watched a movie, Tick Tick Boom, which if you haven't watched it, it's amazing. It's based on a true story of this composer, the composer of Rent.
Jonathan Mark Larson.
Before Rent was big, you know, he was a struggling artist in New York in the 90s, and the movie's about the pivotal moment of when he turns 30, and like he hasn't succeeded yet as an artist. And we watched this together. You know, I teared up a little bit, but disclaimer, it takes me a lot to cry, and I feel very bad about that in front of Michael, who's very sweet and has a tender heart.
She is a woman of steel. Yeah.
Can't break me.
Yep.
And you know, we were watching this, and if I can say, you know, Michael breaks down. I'm like, you know, let's talk it through. And it, you know, it kind of like all comes out of, you know, what it means to be here on this earth and what we should be doing with our lives. And, you know, we're artists, like we need that. And if you want to expand.
Yeah, never I felt like so like assured of myself that the performing arts is where I should be. Because here in the context of that story, you know, he was an artist who at one point during like Act 2 has such a huge conflict with himself. It's just like, you know, I'm broke. I live in New York City. Like I can't, I need money. I need a consistency. I need stability. Like I want all. And his best friend is telling him like, you don't, it's not you. It's not you. Like you need, and not in a bad way. Like you are much better than what you think you are, you know, of what you're accomplishing. And it's so true where, you know, when he took that advice, he carried on and he wrote one of the greatest musicals of all time. And then unfortunately he died before he was able to see the fruits of his labor. But died young. But because he was able to be assured that this is something that he felt he needed to do, and he felt so much within his heart as an artist that, you know, you wouldn't have it any other way. It's just like you fit such a glove, and it just became like one of those things where it's just I can't live without it.
Like we can't go on. So like we have to go back to who we actually are. And you know, like I said earlier, being on the outside, seeing Michael's struggle of trying to fit in. And, it's always like, he's a square peg trying to fit into a round hole.
Mm-hmm.
And all these guys are conforming, and he was trying to conform with them too. And how come others can, but he can't? And I'm like, I kept, trying to tell him, like, that's not you. That's not who you are. Like, you're different than that. And that's okay to be different than that. And for it to finally click, and for like the light bulb to go off, and it's like, I felt like I had him back. And we got into the business in 2014, and this was November of 2021, where we're like, all right, let's really talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, where do we actually want to be?
Mm-hmm.
We're in our 30s now.
Mm-hmm.
What is our life going to look like? And I know we didn't always want to stay in Vegas. Vegas is a very small theater community. And Michael has done almost everything in Vegas when it comes to theater.
And theater is dying when it comes to like professional theater, like on the strip. It's dying. It practically already died. So there really wasn't enough there.
Yeah. So like we felt like, okay, if we're doing this, we have to move. Like, we have to get out of here. And if that's the case, are we going to do the business out of state? And we really spent that month between November and December talking to each other. We still went to board plans. Excuse me. I didn't go to like any live function in like November or December. On one hand, I technically was always sick because I was always around kids.
Always around kids. Yeah.
So, I mean, technically I just didn't want to get anyone else sick. So I was being nice.
I mean, fair. Yeah.
But we set up, usually we have a yearly council session with our upline.
Yeah.
So we set up that time for after Christmas, but before New Year's.
Mm-hmm.
And it was at their house.
Yep.
And, we were very nervous on our drive there. We've talked about this a few times about, okay, like, how should we present this and how should we tell them, and we really were like, these are people we've known since college.
Right.
Like, whatever has happened, they've wanted the best for us. So hopefully they still want the best for us. And if that means leaving the business, we hope, there's no big reaction. We don't know.
Right.
But
in a natural Michelle move, she said, you do it.
Confrontation.
Yeah. Like, Michael, you do it. But no, I was kidding. But we sat down with them at their house, met with them, and this was like their third house that they moved into that they're renting.
Yeah.
And then we sat down with them, and way we displayed it is like we chit-chatted, and we're like, okay, so we have some news we need to talk to you guys about. And you could see like the light in their eyes, because they've like been waiting for us to tell them that she's pregnant. Like, they were
weird.
It's almost weird. Every council session, they're like, is there something you have to tell us?
Baby?
I'm like, I ate a burrito, dude. Like, what are you talking about? Literally.
Is there a baby?
That is weird, yeah.
And super rude.
Super rude, yeah. And we're like, oh no, not yet. No, we're quitting.
Yeah. Michael said it so well. And like we were there for about an hour.
Felt shorter than that.
Well, maybe like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the way you presented to it, like we were open about it, but we kept some things to ourselves, of course. We weren't like, screw you business. We were just saying how, we really took this time to think about where we want our future to go and what we want to be doing in our lives. And, Michael said he wanted to get back into acting and
yeah, I want to get back. I've dedicated my life about 7.5 years to this thing. And yeah, we've had some results, but it's been more of a challenge, more of a struggle. I know they say like that's what builds the man, that's what builds character, but I've already built so much character all throughout this time, and character has always just been like beating me down this whole time. And especially this pandemic has taught me that I need to go back to what my childhood dream always was. People say always dreams change as you mature and get older. You become a man when you put away childish things. And I knew my upline always looked at me being an actor as being a childish thing. like you get out. I'm just like, dude, like I never played with video games. Like I stopped playing video games was when I started high school because I was always so busy with the arts. It's not it's not something to where like I get cast as Romeo in a high school production in Romeo and Juliet, and it's like, oh, that was my flame of thing. It's like, no,
It's not.
I studied this thing. I
Yeah, it's
studied the
not his
craft.
hobby.
It's not a hobby. It was things that I actually got paid to do,
Yeah.
and that I
Yeah.
enjoy doing, some more than others, obviously, but that just goes within the territory. And I felt like, yes, things were hard, especially when I was professional actor, but I I believe I framed it in a way where it was just like, but at least you guys were able to help us, mature and get better with ourselves so that we can get back to where we were and, achieve what we really wanted to do. So
So diplomatic. So diplomatic. I love it. Did you pull out your acting for that one? Were you
and,
like, you
and
did?
I pulled
Yeah.
out the token.
And there were a few things. Our upline, Mark did say, I noticed a change in you in November.
Because we weren't communicating as much.
And meanwhile, I wanted to say it, but I didn't say it. I'm like, only November?
Really?
It's been a while.
Think about it.
But and then also a crazy thing that they said, wait, I think it's a little crazy, but I know why they were doing it, to kind of keep us like within their system. But they said, okay, well, because we were saying like, we want to move to New York. That's, where the jobs are. Like Michael already tried LA. It's a totally different scene, not our jam. So we're going to try New York, and I have relatives here.
Yes. And also one little thing before that, I only said we came to the agreement that we will officially quit if like I get a professional acting job. Let me start auditioning, and I started auditioning in November of 2021. So like, let me start auditioning. And it's like, okay, if I can get like a job, like a professional job, then that equity, whatever, like that's a sign, then like I'm good to get back into it. And not only did I get one job, I got like 3 in a row lined up.
Wow.
Like that next year, 2022 was already like busy from like January to May.
Yeah.
So I was just like, done deal.
Yeah.
Let's go.
And so Mark was saying, okay, well, when you guys move out, when you guys move and everything, if you happen to meet people who are, you share your story maybe, and they're like, oh, I wonder what that is. You can just like, send them our way, and we'll build your downline for you. And so, that was just a way to keep us roped in, to keep something attached to us of like, oh, well, we'll build it for you. But of course that means then we'll have to come back.
Right.
And, Michael was very much like, oh, thank you so much.
That's great. Thank you. We'll consider that.
But yeah, and of course, JC asked me like, well, Michael, that's what you want to do. And, Michelle, what about you? Like, do you want to build this business single? Because you can still do that. And I'm like, oh, I want to support my husband. And she's like, you can still support him building this. Like I want to support him out, like without the business or like outside the business or something. Cause I was like, how do I not say no directly? Like, again, like
without causing a riff or a confrontation.
Right. Cause like, I didn't want to be a jerk and be like, no, absolutely not. I hate it. I've always hated it. I just wanted to be like, well, no, I just want to be there to support him. And I didn't want to elaborate like, well, if he has a show or if he's traveling, I want to be able to visit him and see him. And of course I can't do that if I'm still in the business. So
yeah,
we ended on good terms, but man, when we walked out of their house and like, it was like the few days before New Year's, it was
like freedom.
The heavens have opened.
Like they chant all the time, freedom. That's exactly how we felt.
Like the weight.
Yeah.
I'm so happy for you guys. Like you guys leaving that business, you guys, I mean, I can already just tell you guys are full of life. And I think it's amazing that both of you guys can do what you actually want to do now in life. And so now you guys are in New York, which is pretty cool. And so Michael, you're still acting, right? And that's what you're doing in New York. And Michelle, are you still teaching?
Yes, I'm still teaching, and I'm also writing a fiction novel, and that's being edited, so we'll see where that goes.
Oh, and
yes.
It's beautiful. It's beautifully coming together. Yeah, and we've been busy, staying busy, on track with doing everything we enjoy doing, which obviously every single industry, no matter what, comes with its stresses, but it's the different kind of stress where it fuels us. It's the kind of stress that we just lean into, that we enjoy so much, because it's just what what we grew passionate about,
And like we can actually talk to each other and share things with each other, and be open and quirky and weird again. And like before, when we would go out in public, basically just to prospect, even though we were supposed to be out on a date enjoying each other, we were really prospecting. And like I couldn't be myself, and I couldn't be openly and bubbly and loud and like weird and stuff. But now, like, well, we're in New York, so you could be weird and no one will bat
Yeah,
Totally. But also, I'll tell you what's weird, Danny, is that when we get together with like new friends, like new couples that we meet out here in New York, it was so weird, like to sit down like over dinner or something and just get to know each other without having in the back of our mind, like having to think about, so are you an outcome focused person or a process focused person? Where do you see
Right.
yourself in 5 years, And it's like,
Yeah.
are we still good to meet at like 6:30 p.m.?
Yeah.
Because because we are people of accountability. Like what we say,
Yeah.
like, Jesus Christ,
so
get out of my head.
We met up with a couple months ago for dinner, and before that, I think it was before that, Michael texted me being like, all right, did you bring the book? And I'm like,
did you bring the Business of the 21st Century book, or
like, what?
Who Moved My Cheese later on?
Like,
That's
shut
funny.
up. Like, don't bring that back.
It's crazy, isn't it though? Like even when we're scheduling these, people like I'm always like, yeah, it's like a meet and greet one, except for we're not trying to get you into something, But it is funny because you're right. Whenever even when I talk to people at the grocery store, I kind of have that same thing. Like I don't have to be if I ask them like, oh, then they say they're in college. If I say, oh, what are you doing in college? It's a genuine curiosity. It's not because I have this ulterior motive. It stops there. If they're in school for like business. I'm like, dude, that's awesome. Like, and then, continue the conversation. I go on my way. I'm still a talkative person. I'm very outgoing. I'll talk to everybody. But the way that this business just made you into this like robotic person. And now that you guys are out, you're thriving. I am just so excited for you guys. And I've taken up so much of your time already. It's been a hot minute.
We love this so much. We apologize if we've taken so much of your time. I know like a lot of the questions were almost extremely long-winded. They were long tornadoes almost.
Like
that's okay.
So crazy. Of course, we could talk even more in detail.
Oh yeah.
So it's so wild, just all the things that even to each other will randomly be like, oh my God, do you remember that time?
Well, I'm really grateful that you guys came on and shared your story, and have had a willingness to, be vulnerable and speak about some things that are pretty tough. So thank you so much for that. Do you guys have any last words for our listeners?
Well, one thing is we can't thank you enough, Danny, so much for starting this platform, for giving people a voice and giving people a chance to be able to, one, share their story, share what they've been through, but let off all the steam and let out all the trauma that they've gone through, and be able to process and to build upon that, and
to find a community in that,
and to find such a safe and happy community of people that have gone through such, even some people that have gone through worse things than
that we even know
about, and be able to share that here, and to unite all of us and know that we know we're not all alone in that. We've all encountered, and how we can grow upon that. Like seriously, so thankful for that. It's amazing.
And definitely, if you're questioning things, or if you feel in your gut, there's a reason why you feel it and why you question it. And kind of going back to how I was told to kind of just like, just let a guy do his thing, seek out actual professional help. There's none of the upline that is qualified to actually give you any marital advice or any relationship advice or any physical advice for your own body. Actually see doctors and see counselors if you really need to, and there's no shame in that. You're just seeking answers, and that's okay.
Wow. Yeah. Well, thank you guys. I do it for you guys. I do it for everybody else. I never get used to people saying thank you to me. So thank you guys for your kind words. I just am so grateful that we have built up this community because I feel like, and I always say this too, like, you honestly, most of your guys' biggest supporters are going to be other worldwide dream builders who have left or other people who were in Amway, these motivational tools businesses, because we're all motivated people, but we all know what it's like to have phony support. So we are all here to offer that support. And if you're out there listening and you feel, like you have a story or you feel like you're alone, hey, reach out. You guys can be just like Michael and Michelle. You guys can come on anonymously if you want to. You can share as much or as little as you want. Just DM me on Instagram at exesandT.podcast. You guys can find me on TikTok as well at exesandT.podcast and everywhere where podcasts are heard. And we'll catch everybody on the next episode.
Thank you.